But tonight, let's meet our first inductee. Some people never knew that there was actually a real man behind Hooker Headers, and his name is Gary Hooker.
Gary had been an adventurous kid who could name any car before the age of 10. He also had a mechanical prowess that had an astute ability to rebuild engines.
After building his first set of one-off headers for his own car, the interest in that product became so strong in the motorsports industry that Gary was kind of forced to start his own business in his parents' garage.
And unfortunately, no one told Gary that building headers sounded like a great idea. But he's a good example of when your passion is a need to build this, your dream can truly transform the world. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together. Welcome to the stage, the one and only Gary Hooker.
I wish that I could fly into the sky so very high, just like a dragonfly.
Wasn't expecting to be first here. When I was informed that I was going to be in the Hall of Fame, I was totally taken aback because I said, gee, what did I ever do for SEMA? And what I immediately came up with was, I really don't deserve this, but as with most of the companies and the stories in this industry, it involved hundreds of people, contacts, and so on. And I came to realize that I was just a common denominator in this story. So I decided that I would tell the story with names. Now, I'm trying, in the next 5 minutes, I will try to mention as many names as I can. Each of the names would have a long story connected with each one, and I'll have to go fast. So, the story starts with me, more or less, with an 8th grade teacher that asked us to describe our lives 20 years in the future. And so I wrote a paper, and it was probably 30 or 40 years later that I thought about that paper, and I looked at my life and I said, wow, my life turned out almost exactly like this paper. I don't have the paper, but I can remember most of it. So that was kind of the beginning. Now, I just came up with this recently, but how the business actually started was a guy by the name of Jack Bear, an engine builder. And after going to a little bit of college, some time in the military, I went to work for General Dynamics, and I ended up getting enough money to buy a brand new 409 Chevy. To make the story shorter, I ended up at Jack Bear's dyno. Now, I had built my own headers for the car because basically I couldn't afford to buy anything. And I guess I had a few ideas, but he had run a customer's car on the dyno that he had just built. And he ran mine afterwards, and he said, hey, stick around. And so I stuck around. He got rid of the customer. He said, your car just made more horsepower than that car I just built. And he said, it must be the headers. So he said, can you get me some? I said, well, no, I can't. That's the only ones. And I said, if you give me a ride home, I'll just take these off of my car and put them onto your car. He was racing a 409 at the time. And I don't know, that fact that I did that, who's that crazy to just do something like that, stemmed back to that's the moment when I started business. But in back of that's another dream. So that's Jack Bear. Then he went to the races, and he went 3 miles an hour faster and a tenth quicker, and so I'm in business. So I sold my car to buy equipment and started a business. I couldn't even weld, but I learned to weld quickly, and it happened. The next name on the list was a guy by the name of Elwin Westbrook, and he was a racer at the time. He needed some space. He came, so we shared a shop, $40 a month rent with a pit, and Elwin built cars, and fast forward just a short 6 months, and I was living at home, and 6 of the top 10 AFX racers there was a ladder where you challenged, had my headers on. Gave them all away. The fact I lived at home allowed me to do that. And so there were names like Hayden Prophet, Dick Landy, and so on that tried my product. Now, one of the things I always say about this industry, or have said about this industry, it doesn't have a lot of loyalty. If you're building the best thing, the thing that works, you'll be okay. But next weekend, if you don't, you're done. So I thank those guys. Those are names on my list. People like the Summers Brothers. I built headers for them. So I was struggling along. Anyway, and the next and most important name on the list is my wife, Gail, of 52 years. She passed. She passed 6 weeks ago. So that's where SEMA started. She was 8 months pregnant with our first child. I have 3 beautiful children, Amy, Craig, and Megan. But Gail and I went to the first SEMA show, or the first one I thought. I guess there were other ones. It was in Disneyland in 1965. And borrowed money, got a booth, sat there, told everybody that our brochures were in the printer. So that's where SEMA comes in. Shortly after that, a guy came to my door by the name of Gil George. And Gil was a master fabricator, and he and I were able to do some pretty magic things. The next guy on that list, following that thing, was a guy by the name of Jerry Swinson, who he had a machine shop, and Gil and I and Jerry developed processes and stuff. So in that in the muscle car era, what was necessary was to supply there wasn't a supply problem. Nobody could build headers, for example, for a GTO. And if one guy built a set of headers, everybody in Ohio would lose, because a set of headers on a GTO would allow you to go 7 miles an hour faster and a half a second quicker. But nobody could build them. So where our success came really was building the product. So I turned from a racer to a designer to a manufacturing engineer. So these people helped us develop these processes. In the summer of '65, my shop burned down, and I had a neighbor, Bill Kassler, who built cheater slicks. And Bill and I formed a partnership, and the the rest was kind of history. He was successful. The next one on the list is a Hall of Famer, Dennis Holding. And Dennis decided that summer that he was going to start a manufacturer's rep business. So he got in his car, headed back east, stopped in Arizona to ski, broke his leg, and was so pissed off that he just went back and went to work. And I worked with him one day, and it was amazing. He went from sun up to sundown, and sold and sold. The next ones on my list are two guys, Stan Goldstein and Steve Swadja. Well, Stan and Steve came up with the idea of the hooker header heart, and showed it to me, and I said, God, that's stupid, you know? And they said, well, that's too bad because we bought 10,000 of them, and we're going to the Winter Nationals this weekend. Well, within one day, they were all gone, and the rest is history. The next one on the list would be the racers at that point that supported me. Bill Jenkins, Sox and Martin, Chrysler Corporation, to have the faith to let us build them what they wanted. We had the philosophy that we didn't have the ideas, our customers had the ideas, and our job was to build them what they asked for. And by doing that, that was a successful thing. So in 1970, I hired a guy by the name of Dave Spangler, who ended up running the company. We made him president in '75 and ran the operations of the company for 25 years. Along with Dave, we have a whole host of people like Rick Vesco, Lance Morris, Nate Shelton, who's you all know. And Nate told the story to me earlier that was the first job he had. He started as a car locator for us. Jim Harrison, who's here, his wife Kathy also worked for us. Smiley Apodaca, Neil Gates, Wiley Cossey, who's passed. Wiley helped me in Mexico, was invaluable. A tool designer by the name of Raul Renteria, my gal in Mexico, Marta Morales, and then I guess I'm through the list. I know I forgot all kinds of valuable people, but also I'd like to thank Jeff King, who was passionate about buying Hooker Industries in year 2000, which supplied me with a nice, comfortable life to pursue my goals. Just a last story in parting. About a year ago, my son-in-law was taking a class, and he had a challenge to describe his life in 6 words. And he said, "What would you say?" And I thought about it for a short period of time, and these words came to my mind: that suit up and show up consistently. So that's been my life. You have these hundreds of people that influence your life, and you end up here. Thank you.